That's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay,
Hello, Hayley Joy Weinberg. Welcome to Life in a Garden Online. Nice to have you
Hello,
here.
Mandi. Thank you. Hello, Mandi. It's lovely to be with you. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's great chatting. We were just chatting before you guys joined us about Hayley's early years in Rustenburg. She's not a Joey's girl. Tell us a bit about that.
So at the ripe old age of 8 years old, my dad decided to up us all and take us off to Rustenburg. Except he wasn't going to live with us. Him and his brother had bought a concession store in a place called Swart Klip. And Dinkum, that's exactly what it was. It was solely platinum mining, and literally the sand, the rock, the everything was just pitch black. And that's what it was called, Swart Klip. So he went off to work there, and he parked my mum, myself, and my brother Grant in Rustenburg. And my mom couldn't speak a word of Afrikaans, and way back then it was a very Afrikaans town. And I arrived in Rustenburg able to say 3 words: hey, say, en ek. So I went from having Afrikaans once a week to having Afrikaans twice a day. But it was all good because I learned the language quickly. At 8 years old, you do pick it up very quickly.
En nou is jy heeltemal tweetalig.
Ja, nou kan ek nie taal praat, but I'm actually married to an Afrikaans boy, and he tells me I speak Afrikaans terribly. And I'm so proud when I'm having a conversation with an Afrikaans client, and I get off the phone and I go, how did I do? He goes, yeah, it was okay. And then I'm like, don't I speak Afrikaans well? He's like, babe, seriously. Like, I'm like, well, ek dink ek praat die taal baie goed.
Met 'n Joodse accent.
So there we go. Yeah, with my Joodse accent. So, but you know, it's a funny thing because when I actually get into it with a client, if I don't overthink it, I can have a full conversation in Afrikaans. But let me start thinking about it and get self-conscious, then I just huck fuss, and then it's all a mess, and then I just change over to English.
Even though the slang, let me huck fuss.
Yeah, there we go. So I was in Rustenburg until I was 18 years old. I went to a school called Grenville High School, which was it was the only English school, but it was actually a bilingual school. Most of the kids there, it was a boarding school, yeah. So all the delinquents from Johannesburg, none of the Joburg schools would take them. They ended up in Rustenburg at Grenville High School.
I spoke to somebody the other day who went to Grenville. I was trying to think who it was. One thing, it'll come to me. It might have been Andrew Anderson. He might have been no, I don't know. Anyway, not important. Okay, so there was this nice Jewish girl, the only one from grade 1 to matric.
So from standard 2 back in the day, I don't know what the grades are, but it was standard 2 in my day. From standard 2 to matric, I was the only Jewish girl all the way through. And I had, luckily for me, a Jewish boy called Mandi Friedman with me. But the interesting thing is my best friend all the years was a Greek boy named Johnny Hadjitasu, whose dad had a cafe that made the best slap chips ever in the whole world. I've never tasted slap chips again like those slap chips. So it was very diverse. And but yeah, Jonathan and I were the 2 lone Jews. And then there was 4 years ahead of us. There was another Jewish boy, and I think 2 years below us. But there were like very few Jewish kids.
So does that impact you at all in going forward?
You know, I arrived, I came from a very traditional Jewish family. So my parents both grew up in ultra-Orthodox homes. And when they got married, they both decided they weren't interested. So they chucked it all, and they decided to go reform and keep it very simple and basic and all of that. So I arrived in Rustenburg. I'd gone to Cheder and I'd gone to shul every Saturday morning, and I was just a very regular, very gewone little Jewish girl. And I arrived in Rustenburg and there was like nothing. There was very little. And also to fit in, it was almost that thing where I didn't want to stand out. So for a long time, I cringed at Jewish holidays because it made me stand out. And there was always this big deal, you know, the kids didn't understand that it was, I mean, most of the kids didn't even know what a Jewish person was. So for them, when I was having a Jewish holiday, it was very unfair. So
It was.
I did almost kind of chuck it and go more where like I just wanted to fit in. I didn't want to stand out as this. I got a lot of flack. I got, the kind of things where you get asked to tell a story about a person that who has owns a business or something like that, and then I would stand up and my dad had worked for Benny Goldberg's, the bottle store, before we left Joburg. And I stood up to tell the story because it was an amazing story of how they'd started and all of that. And I was told that it wasn't really a valid story because you couldn't really talk about Jewish business people because all Jews were rich. I was like, and you can imagine being like 10 years old and like really not understanding that. And I also came from a family that there was like, you refer to people as an Italian, never as an Ata. As a Portuguese person, never as a Pora, and my parents were very, very militant about that. So for me to have this kind of thing where I was told that all Jews were, it was very strange. But I grew up fast, I grew up tough, and I do not regret anything about growing up there. I had the most incredible childhood. Very cloistered, very, very cloistered. But in retrospect, it's so interesting for me when I think about how strict my dad was, very, very strict. And I think it was also because he wasn't there. So he parented from afar and there were all these hectic rules and regulations. And I think it was, but in retrospect, like he let me leave home at 18 and a half in my own car. I drove to Joburg. I enrolled myself at college and he let me go. The only thing is when I came home on weekends, the 11 o'clock curfew still stood.
I know, isn't it madness?
Like crazy. I mean, Mandi, like seriously. I would say, but Dad, you don't know what I'm doing like Monday to Thursday. It's like, I don't care. You're not living in my house. As long as you're living in my house, you'll stick to my curfew. So there we go, stuck to the curfew. But he let me go. And I always maintain that he must have known that he'd done a good enough job to let me go to the big city on my own and that I'd be okay.
Yeah, he must have. You actually come from a sewing family background, don't you?
I do. So there were tailors somewhere, I think on my grand's side as well, but my gran was a brilliant seamstress. Very, very poor. So she would go and stand in front of the windows of these luxury stores in Elof Street, because back in the day, Elof Street was the street.
Nice.
And she'd then go to 14th Street in Fordsburg, which was then called Friederdorp, and she would buy fabric and she'd go home and she'd cut out of newspaper and she'd make my mom these incredible dresses copied completely off the window of these fancy stores. And then my mom would go to a party and the rich girls would be like, we never saw it in that color. She was very talented, my gran, very talented. Never did anything with it, but very talented. And I got it, luckily. I got exactly. I'm very impatient. So drafting a pattern from scratch is like not for me. So I just cut things out of my head. Like literally just see it in my head, cut it out of my head. So it works well if you're doing one-offs, but when you're running a production line, it's not very clever. So I hired somebody who's very good, very technically orientated, and she does great patterns.
Can she see inside your head?
Yeah, she's amazing. She's learned over the years. Like I'll say, because the crazy thing is I can't draw. I cannot draw a thing. I see it in my head and I can envision the final product, but I cannot sketch. How I got into design college, how I passed, it's a miracle, but I did it.
Let's go back there.
Yeah, we'll go back there.
Let's go back there. Let's discuss you taking yourself to Joburg and enrolling in. Okay. What year are we talking about here?
1982.
Okay, so you're a little bit ahead of me, not much, a little bit.
Yeah. 1982, moved in with my gran who lived in Orange Grove. And because my dad wasn't like you can't get your own place, or you have to, like for 6 months, find your feet. So for
Okay.
6 months, I lived with Gran in Orange Grove, and I took the bus to Dawnfontein because our campus was in Dawnfontein.
And
So
number
the dress
14.
design, a number 14, babe, that was it. I love it. Yeah. A number 14. And the crazy thing is my gran never drove. So she used to take the bus as well. And about 2 months into me living with her, she said to me one day, please will you stop telling the people on the bus that you're my granddaughter? Because the way you're dressing embarrasses me, because, you know, I was going to be a famous dress designer. So I was doing that thing where I was like layering 45 pieces of fabric on top of me. And she was like, please don't tell anybody who you are. Makes me laugh when I think about bus number 14. Yeah.
What street?
So
Orange Grove?
Corner 10th and 10th.
Okay. Nice little part of the world. We were in Raglan
Yeah.
Street, Sydenham.
Oh, okay. So down the drag.
Yeah, but we moved out of Orange Grove. I don't know. About 87, 88. Just trying to think when we moved. After I finished school, so it would have been 87, 88, somewhere around there. We moved out of Orange Grove to Yeovil, no less.
To Yeovil. Oh my word. Yeah, so I moved out of my grand's house after 6 months. I phoned my dad. I said, Dad, listen, like, this is not really working very well. Like, you know, I've got these crazy dress design friends, and like Granny is just not coping very well with this. So he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I think I should move into residence at JCE. So JCE accepted Wits Technikon students. So I moved into JCE with all the teachers. And
that's when Sean was throwing his parties. That's exactly when Sean Fuchs, who I spoke to last week. That's who was at Grenville. Sean Fuchs.
Really?
Exactly, yes. Now he was busy throwing all these parties in that sort of time period. No, also not. Okay, just ignore me. I'm going back, crawling back into my hole now, where I'm doing a really lousy job this evening, getting my people mixed up and the years. There's too many years here. He's only 2 years or 3 years older than me.
Okay, no, I think I'm a bit older than both of you.
Yeah, I think, but you're only about 4 years. How old are you, Hayley?
56.
Yeah, you're only 4 years older. It's not a lot.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't count anymore, girl.
Yeah, I know. I said to my hubby the other night, I said to him, do I look 56? Because I'm starting to feel 56. He says, no, you don't look at it and you don't feel it and don't talk yourself into those things. I said, okay, I don't. He said, how old do you feel? I said, I don't actually know. I said, I don't know what 56. All I know is that when my mother turned 40, I thought she was really old. So I don't know.
When we were that age, 40 was really old. I mean, I remember sitting on the school steps, and we must have been about 12, and we were working out what we would be in 2000. Like, how old will we be in 2000? And I think it was 32 or something. It was crazy. It was madness. So yeah, people were old. They were old. I mean, my mother had me at 35, so people were old.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah, my mom struggled. I'm a miracle baby. I was never supposed to happen ever. So my mom only had me when she was 29, which was very old in those days, like very old. So both my brother and I are actually miracle babies. We were never supposed to happen. So there we go. There's some useless information about me.
Did you always know that you wanted to go into clothing? Was there never anything else like being a lawyer or an accountant or a cafe owner?
I wanted to be a teacher. Miraculously, I never became a teacher because that would have been a disaster. But I actually wanted to do conservation, nature conservation. That was my real passion. But I never had maths and science at school. Maths and science were not my thing. And in those days, if you didn't do maths and science, you got dumped in the E class and I was told that I was going to end up on a street corner as a prostitute. I was never going to amount to anything. So there we go. So much for that.
Well, it's a way to make a living. What can I say?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly. But I fell in love with, I'd always loved fabric, and I'd always played like Barbies and dressed the Barbies up and all of that. But at like the age of 16, I just started. My mom had an old sewing machine that stood in the study, and I used to add out, and then I just started playing. And once I'd cut and made my first pair of pants, that was like me. I was hooked.
Oh, that's fantastic. I have a sewing machine. I haven't used it in 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, I love the actual, like I do miss that now, you know, because I've had to evolve, but I love this actual sewing, like the physical. I love the physical side of it. I love cutting. I love having a pair of scissors in my hands, and I do love the sewing side. So every now and again I go into the factory, they all look at me as though I'm mad, and I'm like, please, can I sew something? Just like want to reconnect with it. But I moved on from that, and I started, we can talk maybe, I don't know if you want to, I'm going to jump forward because I now design and print my own fabric.
I saw that, but we just
we'll
you stay in your place. Okay. We aren't there yet, all right? Okay. So let's go back to Vars. We're at Wits Tech, we're partying up a storm, we're studying fabric. What did you qualified with summa cum laude, and then you did what?
I then went straight, so let's just go back a little bit, just about the way, how I ended up in plus size fashion is I'd put on a lot of weight when I left school. I had really bad hormone issues, and they were misdiagnosed, and they were badly managed, and blah, blah, blah. And I picked up a fortune of weight. And the first thing that I realized was there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. There was no penny coolant yet. There was zero in the plus size clothing space, nothing. So I started sewing for myself, and I started getting approached by women who were like, where are you buying this clothing from? Like, this is amazing. And I just, it ignited something in me, and it made me, I kind of parked it for a while, and I just thought one day I'm going to revisit it. And I struggled with my weight through varsity, well, through college also, because they had me on every kind of drug that they were trying to sort out this hormone issue. And it was just getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, I was a wreck. I must say that the 3 years that I was at college there were parts of them that I don't remember anything, because I just was such a wreck from the drugs they were throwing at me. And in our third year of college, we did 3-month practicals in factories. And I did my prac at a factory called Cutright, which used to make, it was in Mansfield next to Soweto, or in Soweto. And they used to make all the men's pants, all the school pants, all that kind of thing. And at really the end of that, it was, but it was an amazing learning curve, because we literally shadowed the factory manager. And the factory manager at that time was a German guy called Wolfgang. And Wolfgang took no nonsense, and he was a workaholic. And I shadowed him. And I mean, I learned work ethic. I learned so much from him. And he was so generous in his sharing, because it must have been a bit of a pain to have this like little student running around after you. But we got on really well, and he taught me a lot. He was amazing. But yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I had 800 seamstresses.
Wow.
Like the madness that went on there, the fighting, the stabbing with the scissors, and you cannot, I mean, I could have you have the whole night telling you. Incredible. It was an amazing learning curve. And then at the end of our third year, they actually placed us. They found jobs, like we had job offers. We were very lucky. They were only, out of an intake of 33, there were only 13 of us that graduated. So all 13 of us were placed. We had jobs. That's how it worked back in the day.
Look, Wits Tech did the same thing when we were there as well, and came to jobs after you had to work in the last year, and then they sort of lined up a few jobs. It was amazing. It was. I mean, the lecturers that I had were just phenomenal. I was very blessed, because my course was the last one where they had combined fashion and management. So the course was called Fashion, Design and Management Technology. And am I grateful for that, because the fashion design is the easy part. It's the management technology and learning, costing and budgeting and cut plans and all of that. And I mean, we had amazing lecturers. And then they split the course
at the end of our 3 years, and they made a fashion course and a management course. And I think it was sad that they did that, because it's important that you know how to cost a garment, because you're going to be a fancy fashion designer and you're going to make a fancy dress that you're never going to make any money on. Well, then you're not going to be such a fancy fashion designer for very long.
Agreed.
Yeah. So then I got a job and I lasted 2 months. Sadly, they were incredibly anti-Semitic. It was bizarre. I mean, the abuse that I endured there was just insane. But my dad was a hardcore worker. So when I called him and I said, Dad, listen, I can't do this. Like, I have to leave. Like, these people are just beyond anything. And I'm really hating this. And he was like, listen, my girl, you need to stay there and you need to learn at their expense. Because if you go out on your own now, thinking you know it all, he said, you are going to come badly unstuck. He said, and I'm just telling you now that there will be no rent money from me at the end of the month. Ooh. He said, so the choice is yours. You go out on your own, you make sure you make that rent money. So I gave it another month and I thought, no, I actually can't do this. And I am quite, but also I am quite hot-headed. I'm a Leo woman. So I am quite hot-headed and I am impulsive, and I did it. I resigned and left.
It's birthday month.
It was on the 30th of July.
Ah, okay. Happy birthday for the 30th.
Yeah, thank you. And I left and I set up in my flat. I had a flat in Ilovo that I was renting, and it was all of 375 rand a month.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. And I made the rent at the end of the month, and I never, ever asked him for rent money, ever. And I started sewing. I had already built up a clientele while I was at college. And I left kind of with an established clientele. And I went off and I started sewing from my flat, and I was making a living, paying the rent. And then I got bold and decided to open a factory.
Ooh la la.
And I was 21 years old when I did that. And I was too young. I would never advise that, because listen, I suppose today maybe it's different, but it wasn't a smart move. My staff were older than me. They knew more. They knew how to take advantage. They came from the clothing industry. They knew all the tricks of the trade. But, it was a learning curve. My mom was working with me in the business, so it was great. She used to come from Rustenburg 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and she used to sit at the front reception. And listen, we had a lot of fun. It was very expensive because I was very naive, but there were good lessons learned there. And then I had a boyfriend who was immigrating to Canada. And he asked me if I wanted to go with. And I decided, you know what? I was 23 years old. I wasn't loving the factory vibe. The lease was up. And like literally in 2 months, I packed it all up, put it in storage, got on a plane and went to Canada.
Where in Canada?
To Toronto, babe.
I landed in Toronto. It was raining and horrible. How long were you there for?
I was there for 6 months.
Okay.
But I had I got very, very lucky. The Jewish telegraph is way better than any bush telegraph. So my mother phones me one day and she's like, and back in the day, there were no cell phones. So like you did one call a week and it cost an absolute fortune.
Yeah.
So she called me and she said, Auntie, and I'm trying to think of who Auntie whoever in Durban's best friend's daughter's got a clothing shop in Toronto and she's pregnant. Maybe you should give her a call and see if she needs help. I was like, can you just picture the conversation? So I was like, okay, well, send me her number and, send me her number. So she phoned me 2 days later with the number and I called and she said, well, come in for an interview. So I said, well, I just need you to know that I'm not legal to work. I'm legal to be here for 6 months, but I'm not legal to work. She said, come and talk. Anyway, off I went to this very, very fancy, amazing boutique on the Avenue Road in Toronto. Like, schwanky. Oh, darling, you don't even want to know how schwanky. And we met, and of course, you know, she was an ex-South African, I was South African, you know, it's like she was so grateful just to have like a crazy South African to talk to, which I'll refer back to when I tell you the rest of the story. So she said, okay, she said, well, we can pay you cash. I do need some help. I like your energy. Let's give it a month's bash and see how much do you want to earn. So I said, well, I've worked out what I need, and like I need like a minimum of $8 an hour. She said, that's way more than we're paying our Canadian staff. So I said, I've actually got enough money to see me through for 6 months. So I don't really need to work. I just thought it would be nice to keep myself busy. She said, well, let me talk to my husband. I'll come back to you. Anyway, they phoned me and they said, please come. Like we'd really like to see what you're about. So I joined them, and sure, that was an experience. Like I had arrived in Canada thinking that I came from the backwaters of backwaters. I know when we were in sanctions, nobody really wanted to know who we are. It was like you didn't really want to even say you were from South Africa, deep dark 80s, all of that kind of thing. And I arrived in Canada, and they were like little robots, the Canadians.
I don't think that's changed.
Mandi, like it was such an eye-opener for me. Like the first day that I took the bus, so I used to have to take 2 buses. I was living in a basement apartment that I was renting.
What's the boyfriend?
The boyfriend was working for a restaurant, also ex-South Africans, that had started an amazing restaurant called Blueberry Hill. And he was working for them in the kitchen. He was actually a writer. Are they still around?
No, he was still around, the boyfriend.
He was still around. Yeah, no, he was very much around. And so the first day I wanted to tell you, so I rented a basement apartment in a home owned by Sam and Edna Diamond.
Couldn't get more
you have to let me tell you, you have to bring me back there, because I do have to tell you a little bit about Sam and Edna Diamond, because that's something that will stay with me it was just the most insane experience. If you can picture, I want you to picture what you think Sam and Edna look like, and then we'll come back and you'll tell me what you think. So the first day that I'm going off to my new job, I take 2 buses, a subway, and then I walked like 5 blocks.
Eish.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, you know, and here was like the little Joburg girl who'd had her own car and whizzed around, you know, and anyway, very interesting. But so I get to the bus stop, and there's like 8 people standing in a straight line. And as I walk up, they all go, morning, morning, morning. They look like those nodding dogs, you know, those like, morning, morning, morning. Lovely weather we're having today. Morning. I looked at these people, I was like, no. And very quiet, you know, very like morning, morning. You know, I was like, okay. And then I got on the bus, and I like realized like nobody looks at, you know, that thing overseas. Nobody makes eye contact with anybody because you don't want to talk to anybody. So I kind of just sat there feeling it was that first day was such a weird experience. And then I get to work, and there was 2 sections. There was a downstairs section, a basement, where all the hand sewers were, and they were a League of Nations. Spanish, Hungarian, Guatemalan, French, like they were all. And then upstairs in the store was Adele, the owner, and then the Canadian sales ladies who were dressed like immaculately. I mean, this was like super smart. This could have been Fifth Avenue, New York. It was so smart. So I get there on the first day, and she says to me, you know, I don't really know what, and she hadn't asked me what my background was. So I just decided to keep quiet. I was like, I don't really want to be put into a hectic pressure situation. I'm happy to bead wedding dresses. That's what her forte was, wedding dresses. So she said to me, I don't really know what to do with you. Do you want to do some beading downstairs in the basement? I'm like, I'm cool with that. Anyway, off I went to the basement. So I spent about a month in the basement with this crazy League of Nations. They were amazing. And then I'd go up into the store, and the 2 Canadian sales ladies were also very softly spoken. So I used to have to bring my voice down because I was so loud. I was just like mad South African with this hectically loud voice, and talking like, it was a hell of an adjustment that. At the end of the first month, I get this frantic phone call from Adele to say that the sales lady has called in sick and she's flying to New York to buy lace. Do I know anything about sales? So I said, look, I can hold my own. I said, I'll be fine. She said, you have to open the store. You have to do the store for me. She said, I'm hysterical. I said, listen, just take a deep breath. I will be fine. I promise you I'll be okay. So off she goes to New York, and they had 5 ensembles, which ranged 1986, ranged from $7,000 for the most expensive down to like $2,200. And in my training, I always knew, always show the most expensive first, and then you go down. You never start with the cheapest. So very long story short, I had great fun that day. Clearly, my universe was there to shower me with lots of love, and I sold 3 $7,000 ensembles on a Monday and a couple of others. The sales were like $35,000. Anyway, I finished. I locked up and off I went home. I get this call later that evening, like from the husband, because her husband was the accountant in the business. And he's like, I don't know what to say. And I knew that they were going to be completely blown away. Anyway, I then got promoted to the store. So I then got given keys and the alarm code and all of that kind of thing. So I used to come in the morning. I used to open. The factory staff were in already because they used to come in really early. And I'd open and I'd pick up the intercom and I'd go, morning, everybody. And they'd all go in unison, how's it, doll? I taught them to say, how's it, doll? I had the best. They were amazing. Anyway, they offered me a partnership. And
they offered you a partnership?
They offered me a partnership about 5 months in. And I just took stock of it all. And I just decided I was an African. I wasn't going to be able to hack this. I actually wanted to come home. So my visa was up, and I decided if they gave me an extension to my visa, then I would stay because I knew it was meant to be. If I didn't get an extension to my visa, then I was going to come home. And I never got the extension to the visa. So I came home. Boyfriend at the time then came home a couple of months later, and he had an Irish passport. So we then decided we were going to go and do Europe together, and we would end up in London, and then we would take it from there. And I worked for 6 months. I reopened my business from my grand's house in Orange Grove, and I sewed on the dining room table, and I made enough money to go back on another 6-month visa to go and do Europe.
So what did Granny think of your dress sense at that point?
I know Granny was cool. By then I'd also, then I was like doing the jeans, and because I wasn't in that whole like fashion design school thing, so I was doing jeans and t-shirts. And remember, I'd come back from Canada, so I was doing jeans and t-shirts big time because that was all. I mean, actually what they were wearing, they were big into jeans. They all had their hair, like long hair hanging over their face. You could hardly see their eyes. And they were all wearing plaid shirts. Those checked plaid shirts. That's what I was wearing, plaid shirts, because I bought a whole bunch in Canada.
1987, we all had big hair and plastic earrings and lace.
And they were all wearing this like greasy, like it was crazy. It was a crazy fashion at the time. But yeah, so then I did Europe and then went to England, and I got to England and it was drizzling, and it drizzled for 6 straight weeks.
Well,
not a big sun girl. Yeah, I'm not a big sun girl, but let me tell you something that for me was like, and I lasted in the UK. That was a very weird 4 months for me. So all my friends that were living in the UK were working on these dodgy company. So you bought a company and you contracted through the company, and everybody was working illegally through these companies, and nobody was having a problem. My best friend, who I'd shared a flat with before we both went overseas, was working for the Scottish Health Department illegally through her company, no problem. I bought a company. I bought a company. I did the whole story, exactly how everybody was doing it. And every single job interview, and I went on like about 13 job interviews. I got every single job. And the night before I was due to start, HR would phone and say, oh, please will you remember to bring your British passport in tomorrow so we can just verify your working standing. And I was like, oh, your working status. And I was like, oh, you can't be serious. Anyway, by number 13, I was like, okay, somebody's trying to tell me something. So I phoned my mom from a ticky box, no cell phones, ticky box on Regent Street, absolutely howling. I was like, I can't do this, Mom. I just can't. I'm like, I'm missing home. I'm missing you guys. I can't get a job. I'm lonely. Yeah, and I need the sun, and I just want Africa. I'm like, I am an African. I now fully own that I'm an African. And she said, get on a plane and come home. And literally in 4 days, I was on a plane and I came home. I sadly left the boyfriend behind, which was, you know, it wasn't the best way to have done it because he thought I was coming back. I knew I was never going back to live in the UK. That was like never going to happen. And I then came back to South Africa and just decided I didn't want to make clothes. Like I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what. And my mom was like, it's fine, just take some time. I moved in with them. And my brother, who's 6 years younger than me and who's a hooligan, the most divine hooligan ever, was like, listen, I've got a job at a dodgy casino. There's all these illegal casinos that have opened up. Now, bearing in mind, I grew up in Rustenburg, so we used to be at Sun City a lot. And most of my friends were working at Sun City. You know, the ones that were years ahead of me had all got jobs at Sun City. So the gambling thing was it was very much in my space. He's like, I've got this amazing job. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm a blackjack dealer. I'm like, a blackjack dealer? He said, oh, come and learn to be a blackjack dealer. And I was like, and the money's amazing. So off I went to a place called Kings and Queens in Buccleuch, behind very high gates, because it was all very illegal and all very dodgy. And I learned to be a blackjack dealer. And I fell in love with the whole vibe. I used to go to work at 8 o'clock at night and come home at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was like the craziest life. Really crazy. But very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. And as my brother moved to different casinos, I just moved with him. And then we got an amazing offer to go and open a casino in the Magaliesburg Country Hotel in Magaliesburg. And oh my word, Mandi, that was insane. Like, that was an experience that was incredible. We took this little hotel. It was doing like, okay, you cannot believe. I mean, the owner of the hotel was a young Portuguese guy called George. George fell in love with his A-team because what happened was, because of the casino, suddenly the restaurant started pumping, the rooms started pumping, and the bar went from doing like 1,000 Rand a day to doing 10,000 Rand a day.
That's huge.
It was mad. Yeah, it was mad. It was amazing. And then there was talk of them closing the illegal casinos. So George decided that he didn't want to get raided. So he closed it down. And I then came back to Joburg, and my brother and I joined Sleepy Hollow, which had become a big casino. And they ran normal casino by day, and they ran a private Chinese casino by night from 11 o'clock at night. And I was asked if I wanted to do the Chinese casino, and I was fascinated. I was like, yeah, I want to see how this all works. And they had all these English croupiers who were brilliant. You know, they'd come out of Marula Sun and Sun City and that kind of thing. So I joined them, and I was with them for over a year. And then I go into work one evening, and there's a girl sitting at the table with her boob hanging on the table. And this guy next to her, like this low cut, and I just knew. I mean, I took one look at her and I was like, okay, like, you're not his wife. Like, I could see that. And I know I was being judgmental, but I mean, I could see, you know, I'd seen a couple of things in my 6 years in the casino industry. So after my shift, I was like, I went to the staff room and the owner was sitting in the staff room. And I'm like, can you just tell me like no, we've converted the rooms upstairs and we're going like, because the ranch, which was owned by Andrew Phillips, was just up the road from Sleepy Hollow. And he's like, we're going to kind of be doing a similar thing to Andrew Phillips. I said to him, now listen, let me just tell you something, okay? My father works in ... Arizona, a place called SWAT Clip. And he has got all these reps who come through there selling all their stuff. The last thing I need in my life is somebody to go there and tell my father that they went to Sleepy Hollow and it's a whorehouse. I said, like, that is not gonna, I said, I'm leaving and I'm leaving tonight. Yeah. I'm like, listen, this is, I just knew my old man that would not have gone down very well. So I left. And by that stage, my brother and my future hubby had moved to the brothers' casino, which was legit, and there were no girls with boobs hanging out on tables, called Freddy's Tavern. It was a restaurant, and then they converted it into casino. And that was an amazing experience. That was much, much more upmarket, and it was incredible. I learned a lot there. And then there was more
the table didn't give you like some clues that I need to get into fashion where this woman's boob's not hanging on the table.
No, darling, because she needed her boob on the table. No, just listen, what I saw that night, and it was fast, I think I'd had 2 days off. And literally in the day that I left to coming back, like the whole casino, and I went to like my crew, the guys who I worked with in the Chinese club, and I'm like, what is going on here? And they were like, well, they've decided that they want to go into competition with Andrew Phillips. I'm like, are they mad? Like, do they know who Andrew Phillips is? Like really? Who goes into competition with Andrew Phillips? Let's be honest, back then. Anyway, I left. I just knew that it wasn't, I didn't want to be associated with that. And I knew there'd be raids, and I just, that was, I was a bit of a hooligan, but I wasn't.
Not a nice Jewish girl.
Yeah, no, can you imagine a nice Jewish girl splashed all over the Sunday Times? My luck, it would have been me. I was like, no, not having any of that, thank you. So that was, and then there was more talk about them closing down the casinos. So I decided, let me be smart. I went and reopened, I took space in Norwood, reopened my factory, got a seamstress, started sewing. So I sewed by day and dealt blackjack by night for about 8 months. The money was good. The money was insane. I mean, like, we earned the craziest money. It's a pity we didn't save it all. We went on crazy holidays and spent.
What can I say?
Yeah, we got 5 days off and we booked like the best suite in the palace at Suns, like silly things. But anyway, good experiences, I suppose. And then I started sewing. And I started actively pursuing the plus size. I mean, I wasn't really doing plus size. I was doing more like generous sized clothing. And I did that for 10 years. And then I gave up smoking at the age of 40.
So where are we now? About 2000?
Yeah, 16 years ago. Are we 2000?
2004.
No, listen, maths is not my strong point, remember?
Yes, I remember.
You please do the maths.
Yeah, I got you there. 2004.
Okay, 2004. So yeah, I knew that I was in trouble. I could hear myself wheezing. And I just knew that I was in trouble, and I was smoking way too much and blah, blah, blah. But every time I thought about giving up smoking, I just smoked more. And then I got bronchitis, and I had bronchitis for 2 weeks, and I never smoked. And I thought, this is my one and only opportunity. And I gave up, and I was fine. I was absolutely fine. And then I slowly started waking up at 2:00 in the morning, having anxiety attacks. And just to put you in the picture, I was the girl that didn't believe in any of that kind of stuff. Get a grip. Like, there's no such thing as nervous breakdowns, and just get a grip. Like, And I was quite hardcore about it. And just slowly, I started to feel bluer, and I was struggling to get out of bed in the morning, and I was crying. I'm not a crier. And then I literally hit the wall, splat. Like, I just had a complete and utter breakdown. And my hubby is a very, very stable, like, he's a very cool human. And he was amazing, but like, we were both like, what is going on here? And we never linked it to the smoking. We just like couldn't, hormonal. So then, you start doing that thing. You start going for all the tests because now it's hormonal, and maybe I'm going through early menopause because it's in the family, and Never put it down to the fact that I actually just thrown my crutch away, and I was now having to face life head on. And I wasn't running outside every 5 minutes to have a cigarette when I had a crisis. And I was having to face the crisis and actually get through the crisis. And I was very blue. And it was a very dangerous time for me. I mean, only months, actually even probably a year or two after I started to come right from it, my hubby actually told me that he changed the combination on the safe because there was a gun in it at the time.
Yeah.
And he said he really didn't trust that I was okay. And I was. There were moments where I was like, I just can't do this anymore. And it was a very, very dark time in my life, but it was an unbelievably valuable time, because when I came out of that, I came out knowing that I wanted to go and make a difference. That's what came out of. So I settled for alternate therapy. I just knew that drugs were not the thing for me, purely because there were many underlying issues. And I needed to get to the bottom of those. And the drugs were just going to gloss over it. It wasn't going to actually get me to face it. So I chose alternate therapy, which was very, very rough. The woman that I worked with was tough. But there was amazing stuff that came out of it. And things like that I was avoiding myself completely. So I was a complete people pleaser. I took on every lame duck in the world and tried to save their souls. And all of the things that she highlighted was the complete truth. And I was doing it all because I wouldn't face up to my own demons. And when I started to own the demons, and it was tough, it was very tough. But when I started owning those demons, I was able to start seeing a path forward about what I really wanted to do in life. And what I really wanted to do was I really wanted to make a difference. Okay. And I knew I needed to make a living because I was never going to be a trust fund baby, and I was never going to marry a multimillionaire. So I had to make the living, but I was determined. And with her, we forged a path of being able to make a difference and make a living. And that's where Hayley Joy, the brand, the store, the journey, that's where it was all born out of.
Okay. I was waiting for you to carry on.
So in a session with her, she said to me, what do you really want to do? I said, you know what I really want? I said, when I was 18 and struggling with my weight, there was nowhere for me to shop. And everywhere I went into, the sales lady would go, oh, sorry, those only go up to a size 14. Like, hello, really? Thanks. Like, I could be shopping for my sister, or my niece or something. Like, do you really have to be so blatant? I said, so what I want to do is I want to open a store that makes a difference, that is a safe space for women of size to shop. She said, well, go and do it. I said, are you mad? I said, I've never been in retail ever, and the economy's bad, and I had great excuses because I was avoiding. I was avoiding all of that. And she said to me, Hayley Joy, she said, I'm just telling you now. She said that when you come back next week, I want you to have phoned at least 3 spaces. And if you tell me it's too expensive, and we'll work that out. But you need to open that door. And she did this crazy thing. So she worked with the Bach flower remedies, and she had a pendulum, and she would take my hand and she would put the pendulum like this. And it was so weird because most of the time the pendulum would just gently, it would, she'd ask a question, I'd answer, and the pendulum would, And on the day when she asked me what I really wanted to do and the retail, and I said that I was petrified and it was, I didn't think I had the guts to do it, and I didn't think I had it in me to be a retailer and whatever. She put that pendulum on my hand, and the pendulum started to, and she was like, you see, the pendulum's telling you, you have to grow some balls. I remember the
I've already got chesticles, girl, and I need balls as well.
Yeah. She was amazing. I mean, she really was. Anyway, I left there that day, and I came home, and hubby said, and I said, and she told me that we need to go and look for space. We need a retail store. He's like, okay. So I said, so where do you want to look? I said, I want to go to the Ilova post office. He said, the Ilova post office center. He said, why? I said, I don't know. I said, he said, have you ever been there? I said, no. I said, but I've heard about it because there was the bakery.
That's where Asagi was, wasn't it?
Yeah, but Glenda, the lady who owns Glenda, who owns Glenda's now, she had the patisserie in the Ilova Post Office Centre. And I knew that all my la-di-da clients used to go to the patisserie for cake. I thought, well, that's where I need to be. So we went off, and next to Asagi was a space that was empty. And I thought, okay, this is perfect. So I phoned the agent, and he said, oh, no. He said, the restaurant wants to take that space. They want extra space. I said, no, but I have to have that space. He's like, no. Okay. So then we drove. We had frequented and become very friendly with Yaku, who'd owned the Singing Fig in Norwood. And Yaku they'd sold the Singing Fig, or they'd closed or whatever, and they'd opened in the Dunkeld West shopping centre. So I said to my hubby, I said, let's go and have a look where Yaku is. Because if we open a shop next to Yaku, we're guaranteed to be fine. Because, I mean, he's got the whole world that comes and eats in his restaurant. So off we go, and we go to the back of the Dunkeld West shopping centre, and there's an art shop on the corner, and then there was Yaku's restaurant. So I stood looking through the windows of the art shop, and I said to my hubby, I think this would be a really cool space. He's like, babe, can you see how big that store is? He said, like, and there's an art shop. Like, what? I said, I don't know. I said, I just feel it. Like, I like the vibe. I said, I love the center. Like, I mean, this old, crappy center, but I love the center.
And the backside of it is like really not the prettiest place.
Really, no, not at all. But I did walk through, and I liked the butcher, the baker, the fishmonger. I liked that vibe, because that was something that I'd seen in Canada a lot that really worked, and in the UK as well. And that mom and pop shop, I know that it works. Anyway, I phoned the agent again, who happened to be the same agent as the Ilova Post Office. Phoned him again, and I said, listen, are you sure about Asagi? I said, I really, really like that space. He said, no. He said, they're definitely taking it. He said, but he said, there's a store coming available in the Dunkeld West shopping center. I said, yes, I know, it's the art shop and I want it. It's like, what are you talking about? I said, I was there yesterday. I said, I stood in front of that store and I felt it. I said, it's mine. I want it. He said, okay, but it's only in 2 months. I said, it's fine. It doesn't matter. I'll wait, but I want that store. He's like, okay, well, let me see what the story is and I'll come back to you. So the next day I go off for my next session with the pendulum lady, and she says, and? I said, I've signed a lease. She's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, I haven't physically signed it, but I've verbally said that I want the store in the Dunkeld. Oh, amazing. That's such an amazing center. I love that center. And there's a four-nose back and the energy and everything. Oh, and then she called the girls, her reception girls, and she's like, oh, she's going to sign a lease on that, on a store in that. Oh, and the excitement was like, so I come home and hubby says, and? I said, well, I told her we're going to sign a lease on the art shop. And he said, are you mad? I said, no. I said, I'm telling you, it all aligns. It's perfect. We signed a lease. We moved in and we were there for 13 years. And we've just recently left. Yeah, we just recently, our lease came up for renewal at the end of June in the middle of a pandemic. And I have plans of things that I want to do. And I decided not to renew the lease.
How did the pandemic
Because the pandemic was the best thing that ever happened to me personally. And I say it humbly, but I was very stuck for a long time, I was very stuck. And I blamed everything. I blamed the government, I blamed the economy, I blamed immigration, and when I was forced to come home and sit forced, because I literally couldn't do anything. The center shut down, as we know, and I had to come home. And that first week, I just sat and processed what had been going on for the last year and a half. And literally, I had been putting one foot in front of the other, trying to make a massive rental every month. And I owned the fact that I was complicit in the whole business being stuck. And it would never have happened. If lockdown had never happened for me, I would never have had the time to think and own what had actually happened. And it was liberating. I cannot even tell you. I got up one day and I walked into the lounge and I looked at my hubby and I said, I am the reason that Hayley Joy is stuck. And he looked at me and he said, where's this coming from? I said, here's a piece of paper. I've written down on one side what makes me happy and what makes me unhappy. I said, and look at how imbalanced it is. There's way more things that I'm unhappy about. And I owned it. And we spent days, hours, talking it through. And I've come out on the other side intact. Business is intact. I never had to retrench anybody. I have a small staff. There's only seven of us. But I never had to retrench anybody. And I managed to pay my staff in full. I didn't do the TERS thing because they would only have got 60% of their salaries if they got anything. I have the most incredible clientele who have been phenomenally supportive. And we've made it. We made 5 months, Mandi. We made it. I still I pinch myself that we're actually here.
But now you've
I've chucked.
Carry on.
Sorry, no, carry on.
No, I said, and now you've changed tack. So you're moving in a new direction now.
So I've chucked the physical store because realistically, I mean, if we were getting 3 people a day, it was a lot. And it was a massive store. It was 143 square meters. Been there 13 years, the compounding increases every year. I was paying a lot of money. And we were doing so much with the courier that I was like, what? I mean, it's soul destroying. We sat literally for about 1.5 years, every Friday afternoon from 1 o'clock. I promise you, if that happened now, I would have closed at 1 o'clock. I don't know why I tortured us. The 3 of us sat there on a Friday afternoon from 1 o'clock until 5 o'clock. We never saw a single foot through the door on a Friday afternoon. A lot had changed also. I mean, I'm taking all the blame for it, but a lot had changed. Traffic had got mad.
Yeah.
My clientele from the south were all stymied when they shut the back highway down, because the first time that they try to come from the south, and I have a huge clientele from the south of Joburg, the first time they came, their GPS took them into Joburg town and through town. Half of them had smash and grabs. Half of them were such wrecks by the time they got. I mean, you cannot believe the stories. I mean, it was absolutely scary. So, of course, there was no way they would ever do that journey again. So I lost a lot of feet due to traffic and upgrade, the Pretoria Highway. Also, I mean, on a Saturday, my girls could leave Pretoria, be at Hayley Joy in 35 minutes. It was turning into 2-hour journeys.
Yeah.
So, and also, interestingly, there were lots and lots of markets. And I found that a lot of my clients were doing the family thing on a Saturday. They weren't, the shopping, so the shopping trend had changed as well. And all I needed to do was evolve with that trend, but I didn't at the time. But now I have, and I'm very happy and very grateful.
So you've taken your store online?
Taken the store online. I also run a very, very successful WhatsApp list of 600 women. So I've got 3 lists with combined 600 women, and I go out to them every week with a video showing them what's new and what I'm doing, and chatting and asking advice. And it's very interactive. It's private. It's fabulous.
And
it's a broadcast list, yeah. So it works really well. I first started it as a group, and that was a complete nightmare. I'm very sensitive to being spammed. So I run whatever I do, I put myself in the place of the client, and I am unbelievably anal about being spammed. So whatever I do it with me in mind. So I changed group. I got rid of the group because I was like, oh, this is going to chase people away crazy. And I put it onto lists. It's a lot more work because it's one-on-one, but it works beautifully. And it's what sustained me through lockdown, because one of the things that I study a lot. I'm fascinated by marketing and social media trends and all of that. So I sign up to fabulous courses. I love the whole thing. And one of the trends that I'd seen coming out of the States in about the middle of last year, middle 2019, was there was this huge shift from selling to serving. And I spent a lot of time listening to those podcasts and getting into like private Facebook groups. And I liked that concept. And I mean, little did I know how valuable it would be. And I just tracked the trend of what they were doing in terms of not doing this hectic salesy, that if you, their thought process was that if you were authentic and you supplied a brilliant product and you served your clientele, you would never have to sell to them. They would just automatically
and it makes perfect sense.
It does make perfect sense. But of course, at the time, the trend in South Africa was nothing like that. The trend was just like, dump everything in an email and send, and you'd get 500 emails a day from one brand. And I was like, this is insane. And then lockdown happened, and I was like, okay, well, I've got two choices here. I can go quiet on my WhatsApp lists because I'm not selling them anything, or I can actually spend the time building a deeper relationship with them because now I actually have time. And that's what I started doing. I just started going out every week, chatting, telling them how I was feeling, what was happening, like if anything was happening. And I then got a mask contract deep in lockdown, like in the end of week 2. I got asked to go into R&D on a specialized mask. So not a medical mask or anything like that, but just these guys had an amazing vision. And I went into Dunkeld on my own. I got a permit, I got permission, and my production manageress and I spent a week in Dunkeld. Bar for the security, we were the only 2 people in the whole building. It was the most bizarre. Oh, it was eerie. It was crazy. But what was more eerie was driving every day. I was the only car on the road. The only car. I mean, it was the most bizarre thing driving through the suburbs. It was like an Armageddon. I mean, it was I felt like I was the only human in the world. It was very, very weird. And I then started sharing that part of the mask journey and everything with them. And then when we were allowed to open and start selling, I then gently started showing them, you know, what we were planning to do. And we did a pajama range and a gown range and whatever. And they were phenomenal. Oh my word. The support was just crazy. So this was the support. Hi, Hayley. My husband says if you need any bridging finance, please let us know, because he says his life will never be the same again if you go out of business. P.S. No interest. Like,
and I mean, this number, please.
Yeah, it was just like, it was very special. And then there were lots of, you know, like, hi, Hayley, please, can we buy ahead? I mean, I had clients paying money into my bank account. Please, you cannot go out of business. And, you know, I think in those first 3 weeks, there was like this, I think in everybody's mind is, we were never going to come out of this. We were dead in the water. And so for my clients, they were like, well, who's going to dress them? You know, I dress, so my normal sizing that I call up to like a 3XL is those girls can still buy from Donna and Milady's and that kind of thing. But my 4, 5, 6, and 7XL girls really need Hayley Joy, because I'm one of the, if not the only brand that sizes everything. So our 40 odd basics that we do, we size all the way up to a 7XL. And on the pants side, I've actually even got an 8XL pattern, because I've got a couple of clients who order 8XL pants. So those girls were like really, I mean, they were hysterical. And I was like, I promise you now that a pandemic is not going to put me out of business. We will make it through this, and we will be back. And we're back, and we're good.
And all your 4X was on now 6Xs, so you're definitely in business, because everybody's restocking with clothes.
I know. And it's so funny, because when I'm looking at myself in the videos now, I was a lovely Hayley Joy extra large 5 months ago, and I'm now a very good Hayley Joy 2XL. I'm looking at myself in the videos, because, you know, the thing is, I've got thin legs from like about halfway down my thigh down. I've got thin legs. I'm the lollipop. I've got the tummy and the bum and the hips, and I've got hamster pouches on my behind and blah, blah, blah. And they always used to say, you know, you can't send videos of you in the clothing, because it's very difficult for us true plus sizes to see. I must be honest that in the last couple of weeks, nobody said anything about me not being representative of the brand.
Hayley,
yeah.
Charmony said something about Hayley reminds me of American TV personality Ruby Wax.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Absolutely, I would too. What was the store in Norwood called?
No, it wasn't. It didn't have a name. It was basically a factory and like a showroom. No name. Hayley Joy hadn't been. Oh, actually, you know what? It was called Different Expressions. The original brand was called Different Expressions, but it never had a name outside. It was just came up the stairs and knocked on the door.
Shamini would like to know: do you do any markets? The answer to that would be no.
I don't, but I'm going to. But I'm going to start. I'm going to start. It's time. It's time to take, because one of the difficult things about plus size clothing is that most of the girls that buy it online, when they receive it, it's not genuine plus size. It's upsized from regular sizes. And there's a very big difference. So they are so traumatized by the experience of never buying anything online that actually fits properly. And I understand that if you're paying $8.99 for a top, you're not so keen to take a chance if you don't know the brand. And I'm working at the moment. I've got a whole brand awareness plan that I've put together, and I'm working at just making people more comfortable, but it's education. It's educating a future clientele around the fact that Hayley Joy sizes are consistent. We change the size if we know the fabric doesn't have the same stretch as the fabric before.
Yeah.
So most of we've got about a 98% non-return rate.
That's
which is like insane. Rate. I mean, yeah. And it's because I'm so, you know, the thing is, Mandi, realistically, what makes it all work is that I am Hayley Joy's best client. I only wear Hayley Joy. I'm incredibly fussy. You know, I'm all the things that make the perfect client. So everything that we design, everything that I try on, everything that I sign off must work for me. And I know if it works for me, then it will work. And one of the things that I'm adamant about, and I drive my factory mad, but I'm adamant about size consistency, because I want them, when they receive that parcel and they open it and it's the top that they loved, that they saw online, or they saw it on Facebook, or they saw it on me, and I want them to put it on, and I want them to stand in front of the mirror, and I want them to feel honored. Because for so long, us plus size girls have been maligned because of our size and our shape and all that. And I'm determined I'm absolutely, and I've come up against some really hardcore, like, aren't you enabling women to stay fat because you make clothes that fit them? And I mean, you can't believe the nastiness. But you know what? And I brush it off. I know where I'm headed. I know what I'm doing. I am going to live this dream of making a difference in women's lives. I don't care about your size. I'm after your shape because I can make clothes fit your shape. I don't care what size you are. It means nothing. So I am quite militant about that. I do get a little bit hot under the collar. I'm just like, oh, is this the fat shop? Like, really? Seriously? I used to have these skinny, so I had a skinny shop next to me on the other side of the
something with a
walkway.
P. What are they called?
Yeah, Prezelle.
Yeah.
And it was a perfect balance because she had all those, but like really skinny girls. And they'd come and stick their head in the door and they'd go, and I'd have clients in the store and they'd go, oh, is this the fat shop? Like, one day I'm going to kill. Anyway, I never killed. But
and
I
now
had
you
a
don't
lot
have
of
to
that.
worry.
No, but I did. And a lot of, also, I mean, it's another whole story, but I had a lot of, like, the media not that they weren't interested. And I understood it. It was just very frustrating. But it was that thing where the media said, listen, we are supposed to be promoting healthy living and all of this kind of thing. And if we are seen to be aligning ourselves with a brand that says it's okay to be fat, then we're going to get backlash. And so I couldn't get an interview, couldn't get an article, I had a couple of articles. I must say Woman and Home were pretty good back in the day. But you know what? Crazy. Eventually, I got so frustrated with this constantly having the door slammed because they didn't really want to engage with a plus size brand. And I started to become my own media outlet. And that's how the whole WhatsApp thing happened, and Facebook and the emailer, and then just engaging with clients and doing pop-ups and going and doing private pop-ups in people's homes. I just became my own media. And I must say, though, I advertised in the Beeld newspaper. So I paid for that advertising. So they were only too happy to take my money. They didn't care what size I was marketing to. But those adverts in the Beeld newspaper, that's where my clientele today comes from, is the Beeld newspaper and the Get It magazine. Get It magazine also, they didn't mind. They wouldn't do an article on me. She refused to do an article, but she was happy for me to have a $6,000 a month advert.
Of course.
But it paid. Yeah, but it paid big time. It paid. I mean, I don't have any regrets about Get It. Was amazing for me, and the Beeld newspaper was incredible. But I became my own media outlet, and I am where I am today in terms of marketing myself and the brand, purely because I was pushed into it. And that's what they say, don't they say? That great ideas and great businesses and great whatevers come from the inventor's own need, often. And that's exactly what happened to me.
Well, that's a fantastic story, Hayley, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
One
Mandi.
parting thing, where to from here?
Yes. So here's the thing. I have a dream for a space, and I'm after this space. I know it's there. It's just waiting for me. I want to create an interactive space. So the painting behind me is, I'm an iPhone passionate, like mad iPhone photographer. And I convert my iPhone photos into crazy artworks and fabric prints and greeting cards and blah, blah, blah. So I want a gallery space. I want a space where other entrepreneurs can come and do pop-ups. I want to have I want to do conversations with Mandi Friedman, where if we're allowed to have people in the space, great. If not, we go out on, and then I want to have the clothing, and I want to have a little coffee shop, and I just want an interactive space. And I want to be able to promote other people's fabulous stuff. So quite honestly, what I'd like to do is I'd like to buy a building, and I'd like to have...
An entire building. I was thinking a house.
No, I can only afford the house. But realistically, what I'd love to do is I'd love a building with a fishmonger, a baker, a butcher, a fruit store, a fabulous flower store. I just love flowers. So a fabulous flower store, a space, a pop-up space where, like Dunkeld, you come and they owner-run stores, and it's not chains, and it's not, and there's passion, and there's like, that's my real, and like where we all own our own store, so it's all like your sectional town, you own your own store, and you all have a say in how the actual building is run, and blah, 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 and no rentals, and no killing people with rental, and crazy electricity, and all of that. That's the dream. But right now, I've got 7 months in a showroom space, up in the sky in Dunkeld with the most exquisite view out across Johannesburg. And I'm going out live on Facebook every day. I've committed to doing that. It took enormous guts to do it, but because I don't love looking at myself on camera, but I've learned to love myself on camera. And it is proving very, very lucrative. I'm building new relationships. I'm just taking the business in a whole different direction, and I'm taking the range in a whole different direction as well. That is actually the most important part, because I was stuck for a long time just churning the same. And I've opened up. So lots is coming.
Fantastic. I love the sound of it. It sounds exciting and new.
I'm very excited.
You've just reinvented yourself, and it's absolutely amazing. What's the buzzword? Pivoted. You pivoted your business.
Yeah. I unstuck, my buzzword is, I unstuck my stuck.
Fair enough. No more Prestig in that family.
No, so that's the story of where it all started and where it's come to. And it's been very scary, but I chose faith over fear. I don't know where I got that from. I don't know where the calmness, because I can go into that place of crazy fear and crazy uncertainty, and I didn't. But I think I fed off the response that was coming from my WhatsApp lists. They were amazing. Their support. I think that's where it really came from. But yeah, we're here. We're still standing.
I'm still standing better than ever. Karen Brooks says, Thank you, Hayley. Love you so much. Your clothes have liberated me.
Oh, Karen. I know. Listen, she's been in my space for a long time. I love dressing her. Yeah, we have good chats as well on WhatsApp.
Hayley, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. We wish you everything your best in a new direction, and let us know when you've got that space, because I'm taking one.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, seriously, I'm waiting. I know I'm going to get a call and somebody's going to say, listen, like, we've heard that you're looking for a space and we've got it. I mean, isn't that what happened with the art shop in Dunkeld?
Exactly.
There we go.
Have a fabulous evening.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody else, we'll see you tomorrow night. We're talking to Duncan Butchart about his art, in fact. Be good, everyone.
There we go.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
And